Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com. I'm 82 years old and I'm riding around on my E-Trike telling my life story. And if you're interested in looking at all the videos on my life story, at the end of this video there'll be a link that says life story. Click on that and there's a playlist there for you. So anyway, we're quite a ways into my life now. I'm in my 50s, and we had just moved up to Spokane, Washington, where I took a teaching job at a computer school. And I wasn't, it sounded like a good job, and I was glad to get it if you've been watching my videos. The only thing is there were other things, but when I was teaching in the high school, like for instance, if you're first year you teach metal shop, you do your lesson plans every evening, and then the next year you use same lesson plans because metal shop never changes. But that's not true with a computer school. Now we got the dogs. I'm in my own neighborhood here. So at a computer school, at the end of the semester or whatever, everything has changed. In fact, this was about the time that hopefully the dog's not going to bother too much. I'll get by here. These people raise dogs and sell them. So we got lots of dogs. So anyway, so part of my frustration working at the computer school was, I got all my lessons planned the first time, and this was at the same time that Windows was coming out. And the reason it's called Windows, is because previously to that you just had DOS, disk operating system, and you could just run one program at a time. But with Windows, you could start your accounting program or your document program, and then if you needed to check your email, you bring that up in a different window. Okay, so you had two windows into your computer. You could open up another window if you wanted to do something else. So that's why they called it Windows. So anyway, that was coming out at about that same time, and so that meant that every semester, every quarter, whatever it was, you had to rewrite your lesson plans, and that took time every evening. Okay, besides grading papers. All right, so now we're going to stop right there for a minute, and we're going to go back in history. I've covered some of this stuff about when I got my amateur radio license, but there's a whole lot more that I never told you, and I probably should have, but I didn't feel like I needed to take the time. So now I'm going to take the time. When I got my ham license, you had to know Morse code, and you had to know the theory of electronics, and so I just had some books, and then to learn Morse code, I got out my old Boy Scout manual and memorized the Morse code, and then I would get on shortwave radio and listen, and every once in a while I'd pick up a letter that I knew, and I did that for several weeks, and finally got to where I could copy the whole thing. So I took my test and passed it. Well, then once I got into taking the test and meeting another ham radio operator, I found out they had a club, a ham radio club, that I could have joined. And so I joined it, and of course I was a novice, and that's the lowest level of ham radio you can get. But when I got in there, and then eventually I got my general license and my advanced license and blah blah blah. So anyway, when I got into the club, they realized that I knew electronics because I was an electronics teacher, and so I was able to answer questions. And it wasn't long until they wanted me to teach Morse code classes, because they had a class I could have gone to where they would teach you Morse code. In a couple of weeks you'd have it down. Didn't know that at the time. So anyway, I ended up teaching for them, and as time went by, I eventually became president of the club, and it goes on from there. Because I was heavily involved. Well, one of the things I did in my involvement with amateur radio was there was an evening net. In other words, a network of amateur radio operators called the Columbia Basin Net. That was up, Columbia Basin is where the Columbia River runs down out of Canada into Washington State. And so it was originally started to report flooding along the Columbia before they had all the dams. And so that's what it was. And so I started checking in with that every night. What you could do back then, you could do a phone patch. Somebody in one city would hook up their phone to their ham radio, and then somebody in another city would hook up their phone to a ham radio, and people could talk back and forth on the radio or on their phone, just like we do on cell phones now. And that would save them the expense of making a long distance phone call. Yeah, because it used to cost money to make a long distance phone call. So I did those kind of things. But anyway, and so then eventually I became the net control on Wednesday night. That means you go down this list of cities, I don't know, probably, I'll say between 50 and 100 cities in the Northwest, and you just name the name of the city, like Seattle, and then the people in Seattle that were part of the network, they'd check in, and they would either say QRU or no traffic or something like that if they didn't have any phone patch messages or any kind of message at all. And so I was going down the list one Wednesday night. Now remember, my dad had, if you did, I'm sure you remember, when I was getting my amateur license, my dad told me he used to have a ham license, but he let it drop because for some reason or another. So then if he wanted to get his amateur license, he had to learn the Morse code over and all that stuff. And so when I got my license, so then I'm doing the net control, and I get to Bonnie Lake. That's where my dad lived, my dad and mom. And I get to Bonnie Lake, and I say, check-ins from Bonnie Lake. And here comes WA7HHR, Ernie in Bonnie Lake. That was my dad's voice. There was a long silence because I could not believe that my dad had gotten his. Now we got a jet going over. My dad had gotten his license again and bought some radio equipment, really nice stuff. And so he checked in on my net. He waited until I was net control and checked in. And then so I told everybody, I said, that's my dad. You know how kids do. And so then after the net was over, then a lot of them, we all sat around and chatted with my dad. So that was kind of fun. Okay, so I tell you that. Now we'll go back to in the 1990s when I was teaching at the computer school. So what I did, this was my daily schedule. Go to work, teach school until about 4 o'clock or so, come home, take a break, have dinner, and go downstairs in my office and start grading papers and making the next day's lesson plan. And that was how it was. For 5 years, that's how it was. At this point, I forgot to mention that after I got through doing lesson plans and grading papers, I got on the radio at 9 o'clock every night with my dad and my brother. They had their licenses, and we'd sit around and chat for a while, and then call it a day and go to bed. But that was pretty much my routine every day, every working day, of coming home and having dinner, going to the basement, working on lesson plans, grading papers, and then finally about 9 o'clock, enjoying a conversation with my dad and my brother on amateur radio. All right, so now let's get back to the video. So, and then of course, I think I told you the guy promised 3 raises that never came, and things like that that just it wasn't much of a fun job. So so that's where I was, and at 1995 until well, anyway, we'll say about roughly 2000. Now, let's go back to my airplane, okay? When I was in the Tri-Cities, Pasco, Kennewick, Richland, down in the southeast corner of the state, where it's kind of like Arizona. It doesn't get quite as hot, though, but it's kind of like Arizona, sagebrush and just open area. And, of course, if you've been listening, been following my channel, I'd go out and I'd fly low over the sagebrush and go under power lines, and even went under a couple of bridges, which I decided I was never going to do that again. Sometimes bridges have a rope hanging down that somebody does for some reason, and sometimes there's just things hanging down, flopping around underneath the bridge. And so after I saw one of those, something I thought maybe my tail would catch on, I decided not to fly under bridges. And another thing, you don't fly under bridges when it's calm, because the water's like a mirror, and you can't really tell, looking ahead, you can't really tell how close you are to the water. So anyway, so I only did that a couple of times, and that was enough for me anyway. And I had so much fun just flying around in the desert out there. Well, so then I moved to Spokane, Washington, which is up north in mountainous area where it's all trees. And so I think in my last video I told you how I moved my plane from one airport to another. But the thing is when you go up flying up there, you look down and there's nothing but trees or houses. But there's no flying low, there's no fun things to do. You're just looking down at the trees. And so that wasn't any fun. And then also, because of my work schedule, got to get a bump there. Because of my work schedule, there was no way that I could get out to the airport except maybe on weekends. And I told you about when I went out to see my friend Tom at Noxon in Montana. So, I'd go flying once in a while, but it just the excitement that I had before. Well, if you're doing all that kind of stuff and then you can't do anything, it's like, why am I doing this? So anyway, somebody's got their music going early in the morning. So anyway, I have to fly early in the morning because the temperature's only about 90 degrees now, whereas later in the day it'll be 110 or something like that. So anyway, I just didn't get a whole lot of enjoyment out of flying. So that's why, as you will see coming up soon, why I sold my airplane to my son, my oldest son. But we'll get to that. So anyway, the job was just not what I wanted, and the guy had this rule, whereas if you were going to quit, you had to give him 6 weeks notice. And so that really wasn't fair, because if you got a job somewhere else, they want you to go work now. And some of the people who'd been working there, they said, I wouldn't give him 6 week notice, because then he starts treating you rotten, which is what he did to previous employees. And so I started looking for another job. And there was this opening. Microsoft was, do I need to turn around here? I think I just turn around here. This is that road that I always turn around on. Okay. Microsoft was hiring people to do tech support over the phone. And so I thought, well, that would be kind of fun. And so I applied, and then I had to take some tests and make sure I knew about computers. And I guess I passed those tests because they notified me that I had a job with Microsoft doing tech support over the phone. And so, so anyway, I'll tell you this. I gave my boss 2 weeks notice because I wasn't going to wait 6 weeks and miss out on the training and stuff. And of course, I didn't feel too bad about it because when I first started working there, he fired another teacher, and I filled in for that and taught 2 classes at the same time. So I figured, well, if I can do that, anybody can do that. So I gave him 2 weeks notice and quit. And it looks like I'm running out of time. So in the next video, I'll tell you about my experience working for Microsoft as a tech support specialist. All right. So in the meantime, and by the way, I get a lot of nice comments from folks. I appreciate that they enjoy listening to the old man on the tricycle, riding around blabbering. But anyway, I'm just going to say thank you for watching my videos. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for watching my videos, and God bless.